Before we get into the video, I just want to say, this is not a hate video towards Wuthering Waves. Have Kuro bitten off more than they can chew with the game? And I want to talk about this because I've seen a lot of people in the Wuthering Waves community recently having a conversation about where the game's headed, what's going on at the moment, the patch that's just released or coming to it towards the end now has been pretty dry for the most part. It's really been just the wrap up of Renacita for the most part, hasn't it? And combat wise, event wise, it's pretty freaking dry. And event wise and combat event wise in Wuthering Waves, it has been for a while now. And the community's having a conversation about what does this mean, the frustrations that are coming from certain parts, and some people totally cool with it because it allows them to go and play other games and gives them chance to save for upcoming banners, all that sort of stuff. And I think both sides definitely do have validity to them. I was just coming from the angle as somebody who's kind of stopped playing the game recently, so I suppose I'm looking at it a little bit differently than your average Wuthering Waves CC, although I'm not a Wuthering Waves CC anymore, but I was a day one player, played it quite religiously for a while, all the way up until 2.2, and then I just kind of drifted away from the game for my own reasons, but there was things that did push me away from the game, and I kind of wanted to talk about some of that in today's video and what it means, I guess, going forward for WoW, and I suppose talk about some issues that the game has, but then it all depends on the perspective of what you expect from the game and what you expect from gacha games, I guess, because there is this conversation from a lot of people of it's just a gacha game and you can't really expect much more than that. If you want more than that, you really should be playing other games, which I think, again, that has some validity to that as well. But I also believe that we should push for these games to do more, but we're not quite there yet. But I suppose for me, when I look at Wuthering Waves, I think, although it seemed like an incredibly positive statement when it was made, the statement that we're going to have major patches every 6 months, which didn't mean a new region every 6 months, but it meant a big, chunky, sizable patch with probably some massive story progression and some great content added into the game. And when it was announced, I was like, well, this is really good. But on the one side, I thought, are they going to really be able to pull this off as well as giving us a wealth of content? And I think it's starting to look like that maybe they can't quite do that at the moment, because I'm expecting 3.0 to be pretty freaking big. 2.0 was amazing. It was, in my opinion, one of the better patches in gacha gaming. And I honestly mean that. But I don't think we've seen much advancement in Wuthering Waves in terms of gameplay. And a lot of gacha games suffer from this in terms of how they adapt, how they progress in terms of the actual gameplay loop. It is all about just waiting for the new character, and then you play that new character, you get to play the game slightly differently for a little bit, then that character goes into your roster and it just becomes the same as everything else. It's the Groundhog Day. You're going around in circles doing the same thing. The game really doesn't advance much, and I think Wuthering Waves has fell into this trap also. Now 2.0 came along and we had the flight, and Renacita was amazing, and exploration wise they definitely advanced things. But I don't think gameplay loot-wise, they did. In my opinion, it kind of is just like Genshin, that a new patch comes, you get a new area, you get a new story, and the gameplay really just is the same gameplay with slightly different kits. There's been a big conversation about, I've seen like a bit of PvP going on with Genshin and Wuthering Waves again recently, and in regards to the depth of the combat and all that sort of stuff, and I'm just going to say, both of the games don't really have deep combat. That's not a hot take. They're pretty much quite restrictive in how you play the game. Wuthering Waves is probably, I'd say, it's definitely more reactive, and I think it's a better combat system, but I don't think it offers a massive amount of depth. Most characters have a particular way to be played, to be built, and there's really not much deviation within that. You can try different teams here and there, and more skilled players can get a little bit more out of a unit, and you can potentially use some tech that other people can't, but really there's not much grounds for doing something different by playing a character, building them in a totally different way, focusing their set of skills in a total different way for the outcome to be totally different. There's just really not much of that in Wuthering Waves or Genshin. They're quite linear in that sense. And going back to them biting off more than they can chew. With this desire to have major patches every 6 months, does that mean, has that stifled that potential creative progression in the game? Because I made a video the other day talking about Arknight's Enfield, how I'd like to see the reduction and reliance on timers, because I believe it stagnates creativity within games, because it's a really good way to add artificial difficulty and push people to have the newest thing to be able to complete this timer-based content. And I think if you rip that out of a game, it pushes the developers to be more creative. And I think Wuthering Waves is suffering from that similar sort of issue of creativity in regards to the gameplay loop is kind of stagnated. Now, we're getting cool characters, but we haven't had events now for a while. And I think Wuthering Waves had an event problem for a long time, personally. Now, a lot of people will disagree with me on this, but I think most combat events in Wuthering Waves were quite mid. Like, the combat did all the heavy lifting, but the actual event itself really wasn't anything spectacular. Like, when I think of, like, good events in Wuthering Waves, personally for me, obviously this is a subjective take, like, I like the infinite battle simulation. I definitely think it could have done with being built out a little bit more, but I think that had the possibility to be something fun. I loved how you could just do dumb things like just going crazy with, like, plunge damage and all that sort of stuff. The Virtual Crisis Frontier, I think it was called, that was really good. I think that should have been the focus as endgame replayable content over Whimpering Waves, because that mode sucks. The Tower of Adversity hasn't changed much at all since the launch in any meaningful way. Whimpering Waves has got a little bit better, but it's still a pretty substandard, subpar event in my opinion for endgame content. I think Wuthering Waves suffers from the Genshin endgame content in my opinion. It's just not that great. It's alright, but it's just nothing spectacular. And then the Depths of Elusive Realm, which was probably one of the most beloved modes in Wuthering Waves, and that was just kind of left to the roadside as well. And I believe a lot of this comes down to this desire to have these major patches. I think Wuthering Waves now is a story-based game, right? And some people absolutely adore the story, and that's fine. That's great. I was never that enamored with the story. I thought it was alright. I thought 2.0 was good. I thought 1.1 was really good. I enjoyed a bit of 1.3. I like 1.4. But overall, it wasn't anything spectacular in my opinion. And as I say, I think it is, in terms of the combat, good reactive combat, great reactive combat, but it doesn't go any deeper than that in my opinion. And I don't think we've seen enough in terms of progression, expansion in the gameplay loop. We saw the negative status be applied to the game. I don't think they were implemented in a very good way personally. They didn't really do much for the game, if I'm honest. I was really hoping they were going to expand the way units were going to work, and we were going to have a lot more versatility and variability and variety, and we just really didn't get that. If anything, sometimes I think they become a little bit more restrictive depending on how they're built, looking at like Zani. And I just think that Wuthering Waves is kind of a fork in the road now. I think we are seeing Kuro really definitely make a decision to become a story-based game, which is perfectly fine. That's great. But I think we're starting to see events and a myriad of content probably be squeezed down just a little bit. Now, 3.0, as I say, I think could be brilliant. I don't think 2.8 is going to offer much at all, if I'm honest. I think it's like the lull, the quiet before the storm of 3.0, whereas 3.0 is going to really be probably a banger patch. I don't know if it's going to be quite the heights that 2.0 was, but I'm confident that Kuro will cook 3.0. Well, when I look at games which are different games, so I'm not comparing them to say they are better, because they are different games, right? I think you should look at Wuthering Waves in itself and maybe compare it to its like-for-like games, which are games like Genshin, but I don't want to do that, because like Genshin, in my opinion, really doesn't offer much depth. But I look to games like Arknights and Chaos Zero Nightmare, specifically Arknights, because that game's been out for 6 years now, and as somebody who has recently found it, I am incredibly impressed how, as you go through the story chapters, new mechanics are added for majority of the chapters that really change the way you play the game, the way you tackle the game, the way you use units, the way you think about playing the game in general changes quite a lot. Obviously, depending on how you're playing the game. As an E1 player, I kind of have to do that anyway. because I'm not able to stick content so much. Even though I've got a really good team, they're still quite weak in comparison to what they would be if they were E2. And I have been pleasantly surprised by that, and I enjoy it. And obviously, if you go outside the gacha space, right, we see that advancement in gameplay loops in a lot of games. CZN, for example, we don't know if the gameplay itself is going to advance over time, but I think just by its very design, we're potentially going to see that because it just has a lot more depth and nuance anyway, full stop. Now, you might not like that type of combat, which is fair, and it's not a one-for-one. I'm not saying that CZN and Arknights are better than Wuthering Waves, because they're totally different games. Subjectively, I appreciate them much more now, but I was just thinking about it. I've been seeing a lot of the Wither space having these conversations. I saw this conversation going on with the Genshin and the Wither community. Well, our game's deeper than yours, and I'm like, you're both as deep as a puddle, if I'm honest. And that's not a bad thing. That doesn't mean Wither and Genshin are bad because they're not deep. They don't have to be, because they offer a lot more to what they've got. But I just think Wuthering Waves is streamlining as a game, and I don't care for the story too much personally, so I'm not too fussed there. I don't think the endgame has been developed in any meaningful way that makes you want to keep playing the game outside of the initial start of the patch. I hate echo farming in the game, and I do think we've seen a stagnation in the gameplay loop. I would have hoped by now that it'd feel like there was different ways to play the game, but I guess I'm hoping for too much, and that's fine if the game doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be that. It doesn't need to offer that gameplay loop for everybody. But I was just thinking about it. I was thinking, did it all stem from this idea that every 6 months we will have a major patch? So the second that patch is released, it's thinking about the next big patch, and it's been at the cause of losing a little bit of, a bit of the fat's been cut from the game, because it's been a couple of months now since we've seen any meaningful combat event, and I don't know if 2.8 is going to offer much, and I genuinely don't think that Wither is going to offer that much in that regards going forward, because I just don't think it's that sort of game, and I think we're kind of seeing what Wuthering Waves is going to be now. And for a couple of months I've seen this, and it's kind of why I've stopped playing the game. It's not because Wuthering Waves is bad, it's not because Kuro suck, right? A lot of it's me, but it's just not offering me that option in terms of replayability. Now, I'm not somebody who's got all the time in the world to be playing a game, but I want to bang through the story, and then I want to enjoy a little bit of the game for a little bit. And for me, Wither just doesn't give me that desire to want to log back in anymore. And I think I maybe not the target audience. I'm not the target audience anymore. But I was just thinking about it, like, because like I say, we've had these conversations going on. What do you guys think? What do you think about this? Where do you think Wuthering Waves go? Do you think it majorly focuses on just being a story-based game? Which, of course, it is. But do you really think that we are going to continue to see this streamlined version of events? We're not going to really see major additions to the game that will fundamentally expand it and add to it. We'll get events here and there. Of course we will. But I mean something that gets added that genuinely gives the game something. Let's face it, Wuthering Waves wasn't it. And I still, to this day, don't understand why that game mode stuck, right? And I know people have come to enjoy it more, but out of the game modes that we've seen in the game, like the Trial, the Virtual Crisis, the Infinite Battle Simulation, I think they could have been built on much more, in my opinion, especially the Virtual Crisis, Depths of Elusive Realm, and then Wuthering Waves was the mode that they decided to go with. And I think the reason they went with that is because it's really easy to push people to want particular units, because it's easy to do that. Slap a timer on a mode and you create a mode which pushes people to need particular teams, need particular characters, and hey presto, you've got a good mode that incentivizes investment in particular ways in the game. And I'm just not a major fan of that. I get it, it's a business model. But yeah, I think for me, Wua is in a bit of a rough state right now. But I think 3.0 will be a banger patch. I do. I really do. And I'm still kind of waiting for that day for Kuro to drop a patch that makes me go, that's it. I'm logging back in and I'm grinding. Because I want that. Because I loved Wuthering Waves and I still think it's a great game. I just think for me personally, I just don't connect with it that much anymore. I'm really enjoying Chaos Zero Nightmare. I'm loving Arknights. We've got Arknights Enfield coming soon. We've got Where Winds Meet coming as well. There's so many games to be hopping in and out of. I do dabble in a little bit of Stellasaur now and again, even though it's super, super casual. But yeah, for me, the two games that really pull me back in at the moment in the gacha space are Arknights and a Chaos Zero Nightmare. And I would like Wuthering Waves to pull me back in, actually. But I'd love to know what you think. What do you think the direction is for Wuthering Waves? Do you think this is it now? Do you think we're gonna get back to more meaty patches? Well, I think we will. But what do you think in terms of combat events? Not just do we get them? What do you want to see? Because I think Kuro lost the way a little bit in regards to combat events in the game. I think they just know they've got a good combat system and they're letting that do the heavy lifting. And I'd love to know what you think down below. But in regards to the depth conversation, I think Wuthering Waves and Genshin are both pretty shallow in terms of depth. And that's not a bad thing. Kind of weird seeing these arguments going on. No, my game's deeper than yours. No, mine's deeper than yours. It's really funny to see. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think down below. If you've enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you all in the next one. Ta-da.